Family, this is the Old School Traveler. I'm back to tell you about where I just got back from. I went to a town that I was curious about, and I saw it on the map, and I decided to go there because I had been to Puerto Rico before, many times before, but I want to go to a town called Luquillo. Luquillo. Luquillo, Puerto Rico. You know, when you go to San Juan and you ride around and do things and you see a lot of the city, you get this impression of this is all of Puerto Rico. You can never go to any country and go to one city and think you know that country. No, you know that city based on what you saw. But, you know, every single country has a hidden gem. You know, in other words, they have that city that no one talks about, no one advertises. You don't see a lot of YouTube stuff about it, but you know it's out there somewhere. Well, when you're in Puerto Rico, and once you leave the San Juan area, now, don't get me wrong, San Juan got about a third to a half of all the people in Puerto Rico, the San Juan area. So I went about an hour to the east, and I went to Luquillo. I went there because a guy had told me he was from that area, and he just said it's totally different than the rest of Puerto Rico. What I'm going to tell you, Puerto Rico's an island, which you all know. But they got some pretty cities. Luquillo is one of them. They got a nice beach. You know, I like to go where the tourists don't go. I specialize in that. Now, Luquillo is not a big city, maybe 45,000 people. And it seems like they all live in the same house. Because you go down one street, that's the entire city. You know. But the thing about it is that the people are nice. And man, the food is fabulous. The food is fabulous when you go to Puerto Rico. You are Luquillo. Now, they got a place called Kioscos. Kiokos. Kioscos. That's a ripoff. Now, I saw a lot of foreigners there. And they advertise it like this is like it's some great mall. No, it's not. It's a bunch of mom and pop restaurants, and everything is fried. They live for volume only. Everything is fried. Everything. You know, it's a few bars and stuff. But the good thing about it, I didn't see nothing crazy or rowdy, or none of that kind of stuff. No. I didn't see any of that. And you look at the videos, I'm showing drone videos of Luquillo, the beach, and me driving through that area. But like I said, it's not a big city. It's not spread out, but they got, you know, everything is just organized there. Everything is highly organized there. You know, everything open at certain times. And, you know, like I said, there are so many restaurants, you know, I went to there, when I was there, I went to all these restaurants. And between Luquillo, Fajardo, and Fortuna, you really ain't, you know, you can eat at a different restaurant. Everywhere I went, I just had good food. Now, saying that, a lot of the food is fried. Not just at the Kioscos, which is a tourist ripoff, but even regular restaurants in Puerto Rico. And the prices are about the same as in the States. So, you know, Puerto Rico is not any cheaper than the States. It's not any more expensive. There are some things, like you go to a grocery store, the food was normal prices. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it ain't free either. So don't go there thinking I'm in Puerto Rico, I'm eating free. And there are a lot of things that are just cheaper here than here. Gas was cheaper. Most time in restaurants, the food was cheaper. You know, and they give you a lot of food, especially seafood. They tend to give you quite a bit. But let me tell you about the city, though, and it's Puerto Rico in general. Your car is in miles per hour. Speed limit is mile per hour, but the distances are in kilometers. Now, as growing up in Europe and being an American, you know, I can do, you know, the math either way. It was just different. Normally you see cars in kilometers and you see your distances in kilometers, not both. And when I say both, one is miles and one is distance and one is kilometers in distance. So it seemed like you're going real fast because you get there fast because you see 100 kilometers and yet you're driving 70 miles an hour if you can. Oh, let's talk about, Luquillo. The major negative thing about Puerto Rico, now everybody knows about the infrastructure being shit. Everybody knows about that. But when people say the infrastructure being crap, it's not just the electricity grid and the power grid and stuff. The roads are crap for the most part. The only time we had good roads was on toll roads. Yeah, toll roads were semi-decent, but the other roads, man, they just crap. They don't put no money into the roads. You be getting shocks every damn month there. I mean, it's just the way it is. But as far as Luquillo goes, people are very, very nice. And I don't know, and I looked it up, it's not a poor area of Puerto Rico by any means. Because you got your condos, you got nice things, but they do got some areas that maybe the inside of the house looks a lot better than the impression the outside gives you, because the outside in a few of those streets give you the impression that you're going into a dump, and parking, you park right in front of your house, and it's not just Luquillo or Puerto Rico, the Caribbean in general. It's kind of like Jamaica a lot. Everything is fenced in. Everything got metal fences around it on the windows, the garages, and not so much garages as in your driveway. Everything got that going for it too. And that just always give me the impression that there's somebody somewhere that wants to hurt me. That's why I'm all boarded up. That just gives me that impression. But that's just the way Puerto Rico works though. So, the Caribbean, that's just the Caribbean as a whole. But it's easy to get around. Nothing seems to be far. Nothing seems to be far from Luquillo. You got San Juan, you got a couple other cities. Within a couple of hours, you can 2 hours maybe even 3 at the most. You can go, Luquillo's in the east, you can go across to the entire west side of the island. But Luquillo, the people are nice. Things are easy going there, and the beaches are fantastic. They got hidden gems all over the island. You just got to find them. But Luquillo definitely is a hidden gem. And you know what? I stayed at the Fairfield by Marriott. Not the Fairfield Inn, the Fairfield by Marriott, which is one of the newest hotels there. And I was paying like $140 a night. And be honest about it, you can walk about 2 minutes and be on the beach, not going toward the beach, on the beach. Next door is a casino. Now I don't gamble. I never have and never will. I don't gamble, but the casino would be empty all day. But man, about 10 o'clock at night, that thing was lit up. Every single parking spot was full. It was just lit up, and it's the only casino that I know that's in Luquillo, because when I rode around through the whole city, as you can tell from these videos, I didn't see any of the casino. And like I said, the casino got a restaurant in it, I think, but I didn't go in to find out. But Luquillo itself, you can walk around the city. The city is no more than about 2.5 miles long, and maybe a quarter, maybe a mile wide at the most. And most of that mile is taken up by the freeway. But so when I said it's 40,000 people there, I was trying to figure out, maybe they just packed into the high rises, because they got some high rises there, but not too high. They like maybe 15 stories, but you're not going to see no 60-story high rise like Miami on the beach. It's none of that kind of stuff. So maybe they just packed into those houses, and because most houses had a car or two out front and stuff. But there is no public transportation at all. None at all. No train station, no bus station, no. And now, the one thing about Luquillo, and I stated earlier about the roads being jacked up, they got a lot of auto mechanic shops for a city this size. They got a lot of them. For a city this size, you'd be like, what the hell, man? What are you guys doing here? But, that's them and the way they want to do it. But when I drove on the road, I kind of understood why they got a lot of auto mechanics. Yeah, you're going to need one. And a lot of cars, I'm gonna say about 40% of all the cars I've seen there got some kind of damage on them. Not from the road. They got it from other cars. It's almost like they play bumper cars, and they cut you off like it's nothing. You give them an inch, they're gonna squeeze in that truck or whatever they got. And they keep, not like Cuba, but they keep some old cars running though. They keep some old cars running. I'm not sure why. Maybe because cars are expensive or whatever, but they keep them running though. But it's a place that I could see myself maybe one day buying a home there. Just buying a home. I can see myself doing that one day because it's a great place. It's not far from San Juan. Like I said, it's an hour. And San Juan, almost, well, I can tell you right now, every major airline in Central America and Spain flies into San Juan. They go to every Spanish-speaking country in the world. They have direct flights. So they all fly in there. And, so it's easy to make it what do you want to call it? Your home city to a jump off city to go to other places. Yeah, it's easy to do that in San Juan. In Luquillo. I wouldn't want to be in San Juan because it's a lot more crowded. And as I get older, I like to be relaxed. I like to be a little easier. But I can see myself in a town like Luquillo, though. And plus, like I said, you can go get good food all within 30 minutes. The kioscos, that's junk over there. But people go, it stays crowded with tourists because for some reason, they hype it up. And then you go over there, parking's difficult. There's a beach behind it. And, the beach stays crowded. But here's the thing I like about Luquillo. The beach got a part that foreigners go to with all the coffee shops and all the other kind of crap, the bars and stuff. But the bars aren't seedy. They really are nice bars. And everybody have their local. So when you go there, you're not going to find any problems or any hassles and stuff. And every single place I went to, the owner always showed up and say, "Hi, how you doing?" Every place I went to, the owner always showed up. And most of the time, the owner is there, they're there anyway, because they're there cooking or managing it or whatever, whatever have you. And that's kind of cool because they always ask, how's the food? Is your drink made right? Which is what you want. When you spend the money, that's what you want to do. But my thing is that it's a town that I could live in because it's peaceful and it's quiet. But you got the beach that the public that the foreigners goes to, and then you got a beach that all the locals go to. And it's going to be obvious. It's going to be obvious that you got a lot of tourists because you're going to see by the pale white skin that those are tourists. You're going to see by the brown skin that those are not tourists. It's easy to figure it out. You got some black skins, but it's easy to figure out that this is where all the locals go to. Plus, we asked a couple people and they say all the locals go here. They don't go over there because that's more touristy, and that's the prices are jacked up a little bit. Drink gonna cost you a little more, whatever have you. But where all the locals go, no, you're getting Puerto Rican prices, and plus they seem to be a lot more civil. They seem to be a lot more civil because you get young 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds in the tourist area. One's gonna get too drunk and do some dumb shit. You just know it's gonna happen. It's just the way it works with tourists. But when you go to the locals they're out there with their families. That's the biggest giveaway too. Because their families, they got babies and stuff. I'm talking about like 5 and 6 years old. They're out there at the beach having a great time. And I didn't see any problems where the tourists go at, but you can tell when the sun goes down, there's problems. You can tell, say, oh yeah, I can see right now. Because you see the same person drinking from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night. Some shit finna jump off. Where you go where the locals go, they all got to go to work the next day. 7, 8 o'clock, they're going home to eat or whatever they're going to do at home. They get ready to go home. And like I said, it was very courteous. Everybody speaks English. Everybody. I think I ran into one girl that did not speak English at all. She was at a gas station, but and it wasn't like you pay outside. You had to go inside and pay and tell how much you want. And when I say I want to fill up, I looked at her eyes and say, she didn't understand nothing I said. So I said in Spanish, man, she said, then she told me, You can get so many liters, and then if that doesn't fill you up, buy some more liters. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of dumb, but it is what it is. But that was just her. And I can tell she had probably never left her neighborhood before, outside the gas station. So I'm thinking, okay, I found the one person who's the village idiot. And then it was 3 a.m, and I was going to the airport anyway. So that's kind of how that rolled off. But if you want a place to stay that's affordable, Luquillo is definitely one of those cities. I stayed 2 minutes from the beach, and the hotel was cheap as hell considering how close I was to the beach. So I know the homes can't be that expensive. Maybe the high rises are, but the other homes could not be. But then again, I'm saying that not living there, because the salaries down there are not bad. They almost what they are in the States. It's just like Puerto Rico is like being in New York. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's not a big difference. Other than the people are nice, and the breakfast food was slamming. They charge. I think I paid like $12, and I had an omelet and waffles and like 3 sausages, and and an orange juice. I paid like $11. I'm like, what the hell, man? You can't beat that. I mean, it was just the right amount of food where I wasn't getting so much that I could not eat it all. I ate it all, and I was full. I'm like, this is a good way to start the day. Something decent, something tastes good, But that's Luquillo. Luquillo, like I said, and then here's one of the things that happened when I was there, and I'll show you this video. When the iguana was crossing the street, everybody stopped. People are doing 60 miles an hour on the freeway, and then the freeway comes to an end, and it's a big intersection in Luquillo when you're going to the east on Route 3. It was so cool that every single car stopped and let that iguana cross the road. We got out, started taking pictures, and it was no honking horns, no I'm in a rush. It was just so cool. I'm thinking, this is the way life should be, And then when the iguana, it took forever. But then when the iguana finally crossed the road, the cool thing about it was that everybody got in their car and just continued going 50, 60 miles an hour. I'm like, that's how it should be. It was at a traffic light, but I'm like, that's how it should be. And everybody got out of their cars, and then everybody got back in their cars with no incident, no accidents, no nothing negative. I'm like, this is awesome. They treasure their animals, and I think that iguana could have came out of the, they got a national forest called Young Key. It's right there next to Luquillo and Fortuna. So I think that's where it came from. But everybody was so respectful of it, and he just went on his way back into the bushes or into the trees or forest or whatever have you. He just went right back in there with no problem at all. Now, I drove around Luquillo and some other areas, and they were not something that you're going to think about staying there. They got a national park there, and right in the entrance, it's not seedy. It looks like people have been there for a while with no improvements to where they live at. And like the houses built back in the 50s or 40s or even 30s, and they look that way today, and look like almost everything on the houses are falling off. Luquillo itself was kind of like that on a couple streets, and the streets are narrow as hell. They are narrow, and if a Coca-Cola truck pulls in to drop off some Coca-Colas, traffic is going to have to stop because there's no way you're going to go around them. Traffic's going to have to stop. The streets are narrow as hell. Even the interstate's a little narrower than the ones we got here. So I don't know their standards, but the streets are narrow. And so when you go down these narrow streets, you cannot drive fast. Which is kind of cool because if you got a kid or something else out there, but you can't drive fast. You got to take your time and get there when you get there. And Puerto Ricans, for the most part, are on time. They are on time. I like that. You tell somebody something, they right there on time. And they know traffic patterns. They know traffic. And traffic moved the entire time I was there. You don't have no big city vibe with traffic. You have none at all. But the people were nice. The food was great. And, when it rains very hard. But it's kind of like Florida style, only for a few minutes. But it rains, But so that was one of the things that I really, really, really enjoyed a lot. You know, the food, the weather, you know, like I said, people, my accommodations. And it's a city that if you have nothing, I think you can make it if you can get into the kioscos. Because like I said, you know, it seemed like that was all, there was no chains in there. That was all family owned restaurants in there. But I seen a lot of places like you just set up a pop up on the side of the road. People were doing that, selling coconuts or whatever. You know, so you can make it with nothing. You may not get rich quick. You may not get rich at all, but at least you won't starve. Because I seen all kind of little hustles going on there. I seen a lot of hustles going on there. So that's Luquillo, Puerto Rico. This is the Old School Traveler out.